Gehemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 1, page Reish Chav Gimel 223, in the middle of chapter 115. So, summarizing, we're talking here, we're winding down the explanation of Yaakov's Avodah, the Yaakov service, which was pioneering, paving the way to Matan Torah, to Sinai, and basically giving us the strength to the work that we have to do, was essentially taking the fragmentation, the separation, the division of this material world, which is represented by the many stones, which are the letters. Stones are letters. These are divine letters after many transmutations and gradations that create this diverse world, become Alma de Pruda, and the goal is to unite it with Atzilus, the unity of Atzilus, so that many stones becomes one stone. Tachas Yosem Reishesov, he put it by his head. The head is Chachma. Chachma is the bittul that creates a sublimation of the distinctions that unite them all. Afterward, that led to the dream where God tells him there comes the Hamshacha. That's the Halah. That's from below up. That brings a transmission where God promises him that Anochimcha v'shamaticha, that I will be with you and I will protect you, which is in your work. I will protect you in the Avedis HaBerurim. V'ashevisicha el Hadam, and I will return you to this land, which refers that the transmission will come all the way down into the earth here below. And then comes again an Aliyah. Then he took the stone, ve'ikach es ha'oven asher sameh reishesov, and Halah lifts it up and turns it into a pillar, a monument. And then comes another Hamshach, ve'yitzek hashemen, and he pours the shemen is Chachma, again Chachma. So we're talking about what is Avodah of all this. How does this translate in our service? So basically, there's Halah, Hamshach also in our service. There are things we do that we elevate things, there are things we draw down. You need both. What's the key difference is Tefillah and Torah. So both are letters, stones. So there's Esis at Tefillah. Tefillah is from the bottom up. Like he says, Matat takes and binds, or Kesher binds, or weaves, or crafts. Crowns, ties, binds, Kesher, ties. Takes the letters, ties them together, binds them together, and makes from them crowns. So that's clearly an elevation. So what does he take? Just like what's a crown? A crown is made out of stones, precious stones. So same thing here, the stones, which is the letters of our prayer, take from, what we do is we sublimate our material desires, and we elevate it upwards. It's called the Mekeches Tivim de Nefesh Habamis. That's the Tefillah. The letters of prayer, Hamizbarim, that are like results of the refinements that come from the natural animal desires of the animal soul, and through that comes the Esis Hamshach, and afterwards the Torah. So to explain this, if you go into this whole idea of Mahapach, of transforming darkness to light and bitterness to sweet, what did he translate as Meriru? That's the desires of this world that emanate from and are rooted in the Hecholis of Klippa, called the corridors or the chambers of the negative energies, and everything is rooted there. So how do you transform it? How do you transform a pleasure in something that's very materialistic to a pleasure in God, like he says, Tamir Ru'uv Kitev Hashem, instead to feel that you have desire for the divine instead of a desire for materialism? So the Eitzah for this is through his Hisbonenus B'Tefillah. This is Tefillah. What does Hisbonenus consist of? What does the contemplation and davening consist of? Number one, that everything in this world has divine energy in it. That's what gives it life, including these pleasures. And that the primary force, therefore, in every physical pleasure is not the surface pleasure, but the divine power within it. And the energy that's in it is also very diminished. Compared to the higher worlds, it's very diminished. When a person thinks about this, and thinks of how this energy enters into existence, and how diminished it is, you come to a strong desire that you want to have not the outer surface level, you want to have the energy within. That's what you want. It's like, what are you going for? You're going for a package? Someone gives you a package. Package looks nice. You realize in the package is a beautiful gift. People go for the package, or you're going to go for the gift, but you have to first contemplate there's a gift because it's concealed. Once you realize there's a gift inside the package, you don't need the wrappers. You want the inside, which is the divine. So the outer pleasure, which is why probably he explains it comes from the Hicholis, the outer pleasure is rooted in something inner. We are superficial, so we grab whatever looks nice. But it's not the sweetness, or the pleasure, or the desire, Gashmi, that's the ikar, it's the forces within it. To get to a place like that, you have to meditate. You cannot just come there because we're material human beings. We relate to the packages, to the packaging. So it requires a whole process of mizbonus. That's what davening is supposed to be. So a person sitting in davening, technically speaking, what he should be doing is thinking about what is driving the forces of this world.
I do it perfectly. Every time I daven, I think about a steak.
Okay, that's where you stop? Do you want to have the chayes, the moitze pi Hashem within it? Okay. And then he went on and says, and another additional hisbananus is to think about the pasuk in Parshat Tzavim. Behold, then it says v'satei v'sara. Behold, I give you today the path. Not today. I present to you life and death, good and evil. Or evil and good. Or satei v'sara. Now good and evil. So now the Rabbi Rashab explains that, and as part of the hisbananus. She says, starts off, Chaim Amovis can't be actual life and death, because mi pesi, eze pesi, which fool is going to want to have death? He's not going to want life. Everybody wants life. So what is he talking about? He's talking about something that's truly alive or something that's not really alive. So everybody wants life. The question is it temporary life or is it permanent life? So Gashmi is by nature, because it deteriorates and, as we said, depreciates and is always eroding, is fundamentally not alive. It's alive while it's alive, but it's already dying. So again, the package, the desire, the physical desire that we are so obsessed with, doesn't have real substance. It's very external substance. And what's Chaim is the neshama. The neshama lives on forever. And he goes on, but when a person ages, you feel from time to time, your faculties are weaker. At the same time, you can feel your neshama is very strong. It says, as they get older, their minds get sharper. It means their souls get stronger.
It doesn't actually say sharper, because sometimes if I don't...
It's chazekes.
It says mishavas.
Shesheves. Okay, fine. Shesheves means really more, but mitarefes is the other extreme. Yeah. So mitarefes means they're getting more senile, more maturif, more, it's weakening. So I know, Shesheves literally means more mature, more settled, more... Yeah, but bottom line is when you compare it, what's the contrast?
Because you have guys when they were younger, their minds are much sharper, and then when you get older, they say,
That's the Gashmi's part. That's because of the Gashmi's part. Here he's definitely talking here more the spiritual side of it. In other words, there's a certain deeper growth. It's an example of growth that does happen. In other words, even while the body and everything else is weakening, there's something that is growing. However you explain it.
It's really not sharpness.
I use the word sharper for voice of mischazekes. Mitarefes means a person whose mind becomes more feeble. The opposite of that is a mind that becomes stronger. So I don't think it means stronger necessarily. There's the weakening part of the physical part, but a mind. With the Gemara's talk, with this Gemara's, definitely a mind that has a certain maturity that a younger person doesn't have. The bottom line, something is growing which really defying the nature of the physicality. Because physical, everything should be eroding. Why by Talmid Chachamim? The proof is a very good one. Because these Talmid Chachamim, if everything is diminishing, why is this not diminishing? So clearly, there's a part in them, their spirit, in other words, or in their brain power, or whatever you want to call it, that is more refined, more developed, if you want to put it this way. Look, at the end of the day, a person succumbs because the physical world succumbs. Even the best mind, unfortunately, sometimes undergoes with Alzheimer's and other things. But that's not a contradiction to this. That's because the physical has dominated. Not because the soul is getting weak. The soul is basically leaving. The point he wants to make is life and death. What is life and death? So you see there clearly things. His point was that even while And also the pasuk Yom Yidaber V'Rev Shonim, that even while there's hefsek going on, there's a deterioration going on. He says, and he feels weaker from time to time. Nevertheless, or the margish ba'atmish and the neshama aim b'afseidus. And Adarab, on the contrary, it's more revealed, more powerful from time to time. Zman l'zman. Okay. Mischazik b'yeser. That's what he calls shekeich sichle mischazik b'yeser. Shabo b'sichla yonim nailam v'amukim. Okay, it gets to deeper understanding of things, and also b'chol inyan be'emek ha'pnimiyah shebai. So it's a qualitative shift. Okay, so that's why Ruchnius is called life, and Chumanis is called death. This is all part of the meditation, the contemplation during davening is meant to weaken the power, the hold of the physical desires, and meant to us appreciate the Ruchnius. Then the pasuk continues and says, okay, if that's Chaim and Chaim Movis is matter, crass materialism and spirituality, so what's the next? What's Teva Ra? Good and evil. So he says Ra is even worse than Movis. He explains like this. Because Movis it's alive. No one's arguing that a Taiva is not alive. No one's arguing that the material world is not alive. It's just deteriorating. It means it's not really alive because it's going to die at some point. So even while it's going, it's also in a process of deterioration. It's not a process of real life. So to embrace that is like you're holding on to something that's dying in just a matter of time. But Ra, he says, is no life altogether. It's like a corpse. And he explains it like this. That's materialism. Materialism is Rishus. No matter is Rishus. You can use it either way. Once you're now talking Dvarim Asurim, which means, God forbid, prohibitive things. Or desires of Taiva Shel Heter. Not just a regular, we're not just talking something that's mutter, but that now you desire it. So that passion is really, this is what he's calling now Ra. So he says like this. I'll read it inside the Bible. Rahu eid garua ma'amavis. And evil, when we say Ra in the pasuk, evil is even worse than death. The mavis we have said is gam be'shachayis by. Mavis, death, we just said, doesn't mean actual death. It means something that the deterioration, even while it's alive. The benimshal in the moral haynu gasas v'yeshus achumris shu apselis. That's the coarseness and the yeshus, the arrogance of crass materialism. Shu apselis. That's like the refuse we said. Gam kashein bezera. Even if there's no ra. This world, the material world, by definition, says me, even if there's no use of it in any prohibited way, the package conceals the divine within it. And it's a deteriorating thing. It's ages and erodes and so on. Ra, on the other hand, Rahman al-Islam is actual prohibited thing, God forbid, or taivas heter, lamalas taivas nafshe. Or taivas heter means a taiva for something that's permitted to eat, but not the taiva in it. Turns it into something that is worse than death. The Ra. That's also called Ra. This is already now not just a physical thing which is deteriorating and not real life like spirituality. Here you're talking about something that is absolutely no real life. He says it's as if the physical that already, the life force has already left it, separated from Shanirkav, where it rots, nifsid, and deteriorates, decomposes. And it becomes literally a, repulsive and disgusting thing, literally.
But that was the same argument almost when you were saying you don't like a food, you like the superficial thing, it's marvelous because it's rotting, you don't go to the deep thing. So it seems like a taivas heter, which now we call ra. I don't understand how.
You don't see the difference between a corpse and a body that's alive? A corpse, a dead corpse.
Let's say I want to eat
a dead corpse.
Food. That's called marvelous, right?
No. The material world is mavis. Anything material. Anything that is in the material world. Food or anything, fine. Even if there's no taiva. Okay.
If you're choosing that, you have a taiva towards food superficially, but not going to the inside. Now all of a sudden this Taivas heter, as you call it, is completely bad.
Taivas heter means that the food is kosher.
I understand.
Right.
I understand that.
Because you just want to fill it.
Right, but that's also seems like your relationship with the food.
He's not talking about, the first one is not about pleasure. The first one is just a definition of matter and spirit.
The second one is
okay, nothing to do with, okay. Alright. That's actually the type of...
So when you go next time, you go to the ice cream shop.
You don't have
You're full, you don't need an ice cream, but you just want to do it to pleasure. So.
Basically, it's like three things. One is there's the neshama, there's guf, and then there's a dead guf that doesn't have anything in it.
This is more Chabad Chassidus.
It's like sholosh klipsat meis, klippus noiga, and kedusha, what he says in Tanya. Right? In Tanya he speaks to reshus, things that are reshus. So a person, let's say, is that's, he says to look in Tikkun Eter, some more details.
This idea of Taivas heter is more spoken in Chabad Chassidus, right? Not in the other Chassidus. In other words, like, I don't even know if they're aware of it.
Taivas heter is evil, it's so strange.
I don't know, but there's the thing of novel B'Reshus HaTeirah in the Ramban and Chumash.
Yeah, but I don't consider it novel.
I don't know if that's accurate. I'm not sure. Look. It's a good study to wonder about that. I mean, I can't imagine that refined and tzaddikim in previous generations before Chassidus had taivas heter either. It's just not in spirit. Taiva heter means that you actually have a strong pleasure in going to eat a meal, not for kedusha reasons.
Right.
Like
A refined human being, a refined person in previous generations.
It's evil. And that's funny, the word heter.
It says in Tanya. What does he say in Tanya? It says that it's not. First of all, the word evil is a misnomer. You're using a word that you define as evil. Ra here doesn't mean evil.
No. He's disconnected from it.
It's just like he said, Mavis doesn't mean death. He's defining it. You're using Ra. Don't impose the word evil here. You're using look. What does the word evil altogether mean? I don't like the word evil. It's actually not a good translation, even though I used it. I would not use Ra as evil. Just like what is good? We see evil and good is very, very vague terms. It means nothing. What does it mean? In Tanya, the way he puts it is like this: there's a dover isser and there's a dover heter. Isser and heter come from the word bound or freed. Right? Asr b'dei chitzenim. It's bound. It's like tied up. That's what the word isser means. So that's a translation. So what is it tied up in? That there's a spark of the divine in everything, but it can get tied up in negative powers. So you're not allowed to go there because it's going to overwhelm you. So you have to stay away. That's the din. That's called loishaseh. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. To find that there's a God in there, there's a divine spark. It's not for your access. If God forbid someone went there, not planned, and then so they have the power to do tshuva, which means that even though you were in prison, because asur means prison, meiser, it's like in Beis Asur, and you came out of prison, so you can transform the spark by destroying, however, the action. You can't continue to do the prohibited thing. You have to do tshuva. So what it says is you break the klippa, you discard the shards. In other words, the shells, and what you take out is the spark. That's through tshuva. But as regularly, Adam Yashar Helach Tzaddik is not supposed to go in that place. What's a dover heter? Dover heter means you are allowed to go there, and your goal is to elevate the spark. What's a dover kedusha? A dover kedusha not only allowed to go, you must go. Dover kedusha is Shabbos, Kodesh, a Michael. There's certain things that are holy. Beis Hamikdash, Kodesh, kedusha. So you really have is Kodesh, Reshus, Isser. That's essentially it goes. There's Kodesh Kodashim, and there's higher levels in holiness, 10 levels, whatever. But that's how you designate the world. Things you must do that are holy things. There are things that are permissible, and there are things you're not allowed to. In terms of Chassidus, here the sparks are elevated. You kiss a Sefer Torah. You go into a shul, Beis Hamikdash, a holy place. So the material itself has been saturated. It's like what he says here, the Eris and Kalim. Saturated. The Kalim are transparent channels to the holiness. That's a tzaddik. That's a Yom Kippur. A tzaddik in human being. Yom Kippur in time. Kodesh Kodashim in space. So both space, time, soul, so to speak. Then you have Rishus. Rishus is the largest body of what we're involved in. Most of our lives are in the world of Rishus. You're walking in the street, you're going to work, you meet somebody. It's neutral. But it's in the material world. You can do nothing, and then just leave it in that type of, in the domain of Klippas Noiga. You can do a mitzvah, you meet somebody, you say something nice, you give somebody tzedakah. You use it l'shem shamayim. Then it says, like he says in Tanya, then you take the spark that is in the so-called, it's in a shell, but it can go either way, and you're now directing it towards something positive. You made a bracha on this piece of fruit. Now someone else could ignore and just indulge in the fruit, or use it for something destructive. So in other words, Klippas Noiga can go either way. So on its own, if a person would say, the bonus that he says there, what's Chaim and Movis is the apple itself, as opposed to the Dvar Hashem in it, is really Movis. Because it's not really alive. What's the real life force of an apple? It's the divine, even without desire now. What is Ra? Ra is when you're already now giving it more power. You're saying, I desire this apple, and completely not to do l'shem shamayim, nothing to do with God. And you just grab it off the tree and you're ready to gobble it up. No bracha, nothing. That, now that you've invested, you've worshipped it essentially. You're worshipping now the thing that was really death. Now you turn death into real death, basically, it's a real corpse.
Once you make the bracha, does it take it as a bracha?
Yeah. Once you make a bracha, and generally your intention is l'shem shamayim, you're taking it into the kedusha realm. Not only that. Not only you're taking it out of not only of Ra, you're taking it out of Movis. You make it really come alive, because you're taking the divine spark and giving it life. So this apple, even long after you digest it, will forever live on as being a force of energy in existence.
But even if you
understand?
Yeah. So a lot of times I would make
I just wanted to give you the dynamics of this. Is really what I just said is basic Tanya, Perek Vav Zayin Ches. Huh?
So this 101.
Yeah, but it's just a picture of the world as we see it. So here in the Pasuk, God is saying, first of all, realize matter is not the main thing. Matter is not physically dead, but it's in a dying process. It's a dying element. It's a dying element. Then, actually, something is prohibited, or something that you give more power than it has on its own. You're worshiping the apple. I'm saying worshiping the matter. Then you're basically turning it. You're really killing it.
I never heard it that way.
Huh?
I never heard it that way.
Yeah, because that's the way. And then it's a real, because what you're doing is not only this way. You could say, you know what? Okay, I like my temporary material comfort, etc. But it's temporary, it says. But once you already begin to turn it into a force, and that dominates you, that's what he calls Ra, which means essentially that's low Garua Memavis. She says here, because what you're doing is you're like making it's hopeless now. You've given something that wasn't real much more credibility and credence than it should have had. So essentially, that's a good way to put it.
If you travel an hour to a steakhouse just to eat a great steak, and you make a bracha, does that take you out of the...
You're asking me technical questions.
That's a big thing.
The truth is, no. The answer is, let me put it to you this way. There are people who eat kosher, but they are not kosher. There are people who keep Shabbos, but they're not Shabbosdik. So yes, what you're doing is essentially, technically, halachically, but I would say it goes into the category of the lower category, because what does the bracha help? Okay, fine. Technically, you made a bracha, but if your whole being is doing everything else except you just happen to add a bracha, let me ask you that. Let's make the question even more exciting. What happens if one person eats the steak without making a bracha, but he uses it to help people? Another person makes a bracha and has a long beard and a strimal, and he goes off and destroys others with it. Tell me, what do you think? If you really want the contrast. So a bracha has a spirit to it. What does a bracha mean? It's a lip service.
Very hard.
Now what is a bracha? Lip service.
Very hard.
Bracha is not just saying thank you. Bracha is a spirit. It's like saying, if you gave me something and I said thank you, and then I slapped you in the face. So what's the thank you help? So I said thank you, but then I took what you gave me and I used it against you. So there's also what you use the food for. It's not just... there's a spirit of the bracha. Why do we make brachas? What are we making brachas for? To whom? For whom? A bracha there's a reason you're making a bracha. You say, Baruch Atah Hashem, I'm blessing you, God, Hamaitzi, that you gave me this bread. Which means I understand and recognize that this bread is for a higher purpose. That's the meaning of the bracha. So you're like saying, making a bracha and not doing anything that the bracha is telling you to do.
And lusting off that piece of kugel or something.
Yeah. Look, the Baal Shem Tov showed his Talmidim an ox and a shtreimel. An ox sitting with a shtreimel, eating cholent. Today, yeah.
It's every Wednesday night.
And right outside of mikvahs, while they're in the mikvah, you're eating cholent,
Every
basically.
mikveh has the cholent in front of them.
Now, some people sit in the mikvah and they're eating it metaphorically, right? Hatevel v'sheretz b'yadeh.
Right.
It's amazing. Huh?
Sheretz.
They think they're doing
Because actually the word sheretz now makes a lot of sense.
These places, they think they're doing the right thing. They're eating kugel.
But sadly,
No idea.
sadly, we're all in the same boat. We just do it different ways. Some people don't like cholent; they do it more subtle. Look, it's as I told you, I have more time as people who saw the Rebbe and saw what real Chassidus is. They never saw anything else. That's what they were taught. That's Jewish culture. Yeah. Anyway, so now we go on. And all this is the meditation he's talking about, the contemplation of davening. Through a lengthy contemplation in all of this. So again, let's sum up the contemplation. He spoke two contemplations essentially. One is the contemplation where you recognize the material is not the primary force, it's the divine within it. You think about all the details involved of how the material came into being, and recognize the power of the spirit. Then he went more specifically into the Chaim and Mavis, what is really alive and what is not alive. What are you really embracing in your life? Are you embracing something that's in the process of dying, or are you embracing eternal life? And to the level of Ra. So all this is bonus, let's shemuven heita ve'inyan gam benefesh ativis. And all this contemplation, which is well understood, even the natural soul understands it. Harinitl ma nefesh hatayim tainug. Through this contemplation, you're taking away the pleasure from the natural soul. B'loshen idish der geschmack. You're taking away the geschmack, which is the pleasure, the geschmack. Binyoni ha'elam, from the things in the world, from material matters in this world. Acha nasim advarim nimosem etzlei, to the point that these things become repulsive to him. V'yicheftzei v'ritzeinei, and his desire and will is belakus, is in godliness. V'yisanig b'zeh, not just desire, but he actually has pleasure in it. So you're literally taking the thing your pleasure was in all these temporary, impermanent things, and you're transforming, and you come to realize that your real pleasure should be in the divine, in godliness. V'zeh Ayin ha-karbonos. This is the inyan of karbonos. This is the significance of when they brought karbonos. What's a carbon? Shaya'ikir hakroves hachele v'dam. Like by a carbon, what happened? Money carbon. There's a carbon oila where the whole thing goes, is burned and given to Hashem. Huh?
The whole thing is consumed.
The whole thing is consumed. But other carbonos are eaten. So it's like really a roast. So what's done on the fire? What do you give? What's the carbon? What's the offering? The offering is primarily the chelev, the fat, and the dam, and the blood. So when it's burning, that's what the burning does. It burns out the fat and the blood. So he's going to say that. Hu inyan hatainug. That's the pleasure, the geschmack. In other words, not the beer, the meat itself sustains, but the pleasure in it. The dam is some places it says the dam is the kochanish, and the tchilav is the fat, is the geschmack. The pleasure, that's the tainug. V'hainu shatainug hagashmi nepech le'eneg eliki. So you take here. It's a metaphor, like the Ramban says. You have to envision as the carbon is happening to you, carbon chatas, taking the animal soul, and you're burning its fat and its blood, in order which is the pleasure of it, taking out the pleasure and essentially directing and transforming the pleasure, the physical pleasure, to spiritual pleasure, to divine pleasure. Now he goes back. And through that you do the transforming darkness to light. Before he said sweetness to bitterness to sweet, okay. Darkness to light. 1 second. That means that the darkness, the physical darkness of this world, nasa shamayim va'oretz. Sorry. That the darkness, the physical darkness of this material world, meaning the actions of heaven and earth, that on their own, their appearance is one of independent and self-contained self, material self. As I said, the packaging, it makes it like an end in itself. Should be transformed to light. That it should have within it the divine revelation, being that the yes should be sublimated and sublimated to God. And the divine glory will be revealed below, as it is above. So above, the worlds are recognizing God's power, and even below, where it's concealed, we transform it, and it turns into this transformation. Oh, now he's saying. Now he's explaining. Through tasting, through the fact that he tasted bitterness to sweet, which is from the bottom up, to transform and redirect his heart from the pleasures of this world, and to cleave to God with a desire, with a tshuka, with a yearning and simoin and thirst. So he's teaching Meridah Lemiski, he's teaching Momat Lamaila, that through your contemplation and davening, where you recognize that the taivas are bitter compared to the sweetness of the divine, teva, can be said in Tamil, that brings Isabcha Chashechel Nehira Mamayla Lamata. That's how he's interpreted. So Yeir Er Hashem Mamayla Lamata, that will radiate divine light from above down. The Mokam Acheshel Shalelam Hazen, the place of darkness of this world. Lahoyer Chelke Be'elam, to illuminate his corner of the world, his section of the world. Shalo Ye'elam Mailam Al Er Hashem, that the world should not conceal on the divine energy, Kedushase and holiness, and there should be a revelation of light. So if you remember all the way in the beginning, that's what he said. Remember he said, starting in the beginning, he said, right when he began the discussion, he started the Zohar. And then he said, that's Inyan Tefillah and Teira. So I guess Tefillah is the bitterness to sweet, which is from the bottom up. And that in turn brings down a light from above that transforms the darkness below, that shouldn't conceal but it should radiate, illuminate. That's Chashechel Nehira. I have to look in the Zohar how he's interpreting it that way, but I guess that's what he's saying. Okay. V'zeu hamshachah de Teira, this second step. After from the bottom up, we do our contemplation. I understand what he's saying. In other words, through our work, we can not be deceived by the material, not allow it to become our thing we worship. We recognize the beauty of the divine energy within, but still, there's still darkness in this world. There's still a force that's concealing. How does that get eliminated? So he said that in turn brings that energy from above that, like so-called, lifts the veil. So we can't lift the veil, but we can pierce it, so to speak. That's what we do from the bottom up. And then comes a power from above. That's what he says. That's Teira. That's what he's going to say. V'zeu hamshachah de Teira. U'kadnei de Teira him u'mayla lamata. This is basically lifting the stones and turning it into a pillar is tefillah. Vayotzik shemen, and pouring the oil is going to be Teira. So he says, this is Teira. What? It's known. Teira him u'mayla lamata. Teira is from the bottom, from above down. Liyas hamshachah she'er lamata k'moshu lamayla. That the energy should be below like it is above. Like I explained earlier, tefillah, you're going from your heart. It's service of the heart. You're elevating from the bottom down. Torah, you're actually using words that God gave us. God gave us as Torah. You're studying Torah. You're bringing to your mind, into your being, a higher wisdom. So Torah is a power from a higher place. Tefillah, there's no power from a higher place. You have to initiate it. You pray. I'm going to pray to God. God is not doing anything for you there. Obviously, you're using resources that you have, etc. But the initiation is from you. And Torah is also, you got to do something, obviously, but you're using these resources that are given to you. You're learning something that was taught to you, that you can read and so on.
How does it work when someone is, he feels he needs something, he lacks something, and it's for their own reasons? Like here we spoke about that if you have a time for you want to indulge in something. For example, whatever it is, he wants to have a nice house, he wants to have nice clothes, he wants to have a lot of money,
a new bicycle,
whatever, and he's...
It's called Taivas Heter. That's what he said. That's called Ra and Movis.
No, I'm asking you, davening to Hashem, he should give it, he should fulfill that void.
No, that's more...
Is that, how does that work? Here the Eibishter wants you to pick the life, and he wants you to, so this is the real life, and here, you're coming along, you're spending so much time with the eyes, and with that the Eibishter to give you this, and do you get it? Is that what the Eibishter wants you to do?
It depends who it is. It depends who it is. If it's Chana in the Beis HaMikdash crying for have a child, so like the Rebbe explains that even with Gam Tzmeim Hashem, the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, that she really is looking for the godliness, and that's what she cries out. It's one thing, but for Chassidus Yid, who knows a little better and understands he's going to do that, it's probably like taking the king's head and putting it in the toilet.
So my question is, think about it for a second. So, how would you say?
I just told you. I just described it for you.
That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, how do you deal with
shopping list? I give God every day.
No, but he's saying there's a tefillah there. It says clearly she have lechem like a little bit, but that's the.
So who are we kidding? We're real people here. We're learning the real deal.
3 times a day we give God a shopping list.
No, is this all for naught?
No.
So we would sit here and we learn and we go to shul. We just disconnect like this.
Look. Let's put it this way. By Chassidim we say, when you're talking about yourself, you have to be critical. You talk about others, you have to be positive. If I saw a Jew come into a shul, usually by yourself you should be. So it's a big difference.
See?
You won the lottery.
If I see a Jew going to shul and he's davening and he's asking God for parnasa or health, so from my point of view, it doesn't matter what is it. He's asking, he's turning to God for it. So maybe you should just shut it. Okay, let's continue here. So anyway, we can't wait for you on your phone calls. Zayin Akarbon. Okay. And this is the Inyan of Vayatzik Sham Al Reisha. You want me to answer? I'll answer the question. So when you see a Jew who's going into a shul. The Rebbe has a sikh about this, Tov Shalamed Hey Rosh Hashanah, where Eli tells Kohen Gadol, he accuses Chana, why are you coming as a drunk? She says, what do you mean she's a drunk? Nafshi, what's the lashon there? My heart and soul are being poured out to God for the godliness. So the Rebbe says there, the Teres Baal Shem Tov, when a Jew asks for something physical, it's really his soul recognizes the spiritual need for it. So this is good when you talk to someone else. You see a Jew comes in and pours his heart out for health. People come, they cry, they can stand and cry for hours, say Tehillim for physical things. So regardless of their intention, the bottom line is there's a soul in there. And you melamed chus as being a positive. But when you look at yourself, when you learn Chassidus, obviously if you're sitting and using all that you learned for your selfish needs, you have to wonder what's going on. So I don't think this is a black and white answer. There's a positive in it when you look at others, when you look at yourself. You shouldn't be sitting, be melamed chus, and say, people did this. People went to the Rebbe and used him for their own gain. I know people, very rare. I just was reading a Sikha, Tov Shen Chav Gimel, 150 years old to Rebbe. So the Rebbe tells the whole thing about a story with a chassid. So the Rebbe says there are people who know that everything they were blessed with is not because of them, it's for the Rebbe, to use it for the Rebbe. And they don't wait till they're successful to know that. They do that right away. So some people say, if I'm successful, I'll give it all to the Rebbe, type of thing, which they don't necessarily do. But like in Tzedakah, it's always that way. The person says, when I become a millionaire, I'll start giving. Yeah, you're giving, you're a giving person. So there are people, people who have a real sense of that type of bittul, so then they realize that everything they have is not their own. The problem is when people are really selfish, but they also have this emunah in the Rebbe or in God, so they also want the Rebbe and God to give them blessing for them. I know everybody convinces themselves it's not for me. It's because then when I'll have more, I'll give other people more. But you have to wonder whether that's not just selfishness or it's something deeper, So there's the Gam V'Apum Achtar Rachman Akarya. There's the Ganef who prays to God that he should succeed in his theft. There's that concept. But that's when you look at yourself. When you look at another, you try to be Melamed Zchus and say that their intentions are good. And even if they're not, they may be still, they don't know better. Some people, they don't know better. So when they ask God, they ask for Gashmis. They don't know yet. Ruchnis is the main thing. I think the Rebbe Rashab is speaking how we should look at ourselves here. He not means that we should now go to 770 and blame and point fingers at everybody davening like this. That's what I would say. So when you look at yourself, you have to look far harsher at yourself. Other people, you're Melamed Zchus. I'm not going to, people pour out their souls for Gashmis Dika things. So if you're learning Chassidus and you don't get elevated to this level, you're human beings, but ultimately the question is why are we here? So you're asking me if after all the learning Chassidus we go back to being exactly the same people we are, I would say we didn't have effect on us. That would be my answer to you.
I'm speaking for the future. What it was.
I just said to you.
How do you honestly?
I'm asking you a question. Why are you sitting here for hours learning Chassidus if we go back to be exactly the same selfish people? You tell me. How do you justify that? Why would you waste the time?
I don't think you go back exactly the same.
No, but it comes down to bottom line. You same davening, you can ask for the same material things.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because I want to change it. But it doesn't.
Okay, so that's a fair question. How do you change it? But the goal is definitely to change it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's for sure. So as I said, if I look at somebody else, I'm a Melamed Zchus. I look at the positive. There, people come to shul. Some people come with a broken heart. God is also our parent, father. You don't always come all perfect. You come with imperfect as well. You come with all your weaknesses. You say, I need help. There's nothing wrong with that. That's real davening. It's coming from a sincere place. So that, I'm not talking about that. And but when you talk to yourself and you read what he just said here, you have to wonder, what are you really valuing? So I think the question is not just about davening. The question is in general, what do we really value? What is the most important thing? Now, the way of all flesh, which means the natural way that all human beings in this world work, is materialism is the most important thing. He's given here a whole method and says that you have to come to ultimately understand materialism is not the primary thing in life. But it's going to be it's a lifetime battle. That's the reality. For some people it's easier than others. I don't think that we're looking here for perfection. We're looking for a direction. So the first thing we have to establish is that the standard, the goal, is to become a more ruchnizdika person. Can we reach a madrege that if God blessed you now with $10 million, you would literally go $10 million and give it to the Rebbe? I think very few people would do that. Even Chassidish Jews. Very, very few. There are, maybe, Chiddush Gula that would do something like that. But you could expect that a person become more refined and therefore less preoccupied with themselves. So it really comes down to this. I think is very case by case. Everybody starts out as a yesh, which means it's about me. The question is where you end up. Is there a little less? Let's say 100% is everything is for me. If you end up 90% and 10% is not, you're ready. This has had an impact. That's how I look at it. So it's a matter of, but I can't judge other people. Everybody has to know their own grubkeit, what they started out with, and then how they've somewhat refined. I mean, if we were to really talk, if we're bringing now heart to heart, you have to really look at yourself. If you learn this properly, not just an academic thing to understand spirituality, but personally, then that's how you have to look at yourself. Ultimately, the impact it has in refining you. Do you get as angry as quickly? Is it all about me? Look, all problems begin with me. That's for sure. With self-consciousness, with self-contained, selfish, Self-interest, basically. Everything starts from that. Everything. And that starts from the tzimtzum that God concealed His presence from us. Adam and Chava fed it by eating from the tree of knowledge. Had they not eaten from the tree of knowledge, consciousness would have been divine consciousness. We would have been doing exactly what we should be doing. But that's not the way it is. And that's the battle. This is the kavanah. That's tachteinim. What does tachteinim mean at the end of the day? The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, it doesn't mean lowest, it means the most selfish. That's what it means. The most devoid of awareness of something beyond itself. The higher worlds, as you go higher, the more aware they are. The lower, the less aware. That's how we start. I don't want to say start mamish, because children in a way are very pure. But when I say start, when we start becoming entities. And that's where you start. Now the question is whether there's any progress. Now some people say, I learned Chassidus my whole life, and there's not one shift. My answer to that would be they didn't learn Chassidus. They just read a book. That means nothing. So what have they read? You read? It has to be. Chassidus ultimately is trying to rewire some of our natural programming to not think so materialistically, but to think more godly and more spiritual. But it's a constant battle. Because as soon as, first of all, there's a battle within ourselves. Secondly, the world is constantly conspiring against us. Wherever you turn, everything is materialistic. So even if you refine for a few minutes, you go right back to the same old circles, and it drags you right back to what reality is. That's why it's difficult. It's a life that's very difficult, because where do you find a community, friends that even are aligned with this? As soon as you go back to the regular guys, they're back into their own stuff. And it's so easy to just go back there, because it's the most natural place. Like I said, what's the average conversation in 770? It's very easy to join those conversations, because they're easy. There's nothing to do. There's just, it's just gossip about whatever it is. Now, it's hard to say. Some of us are wired. We're more spiritual by nature, by birth. So it's easier for us to relate to. Some people are not. But Chassidus is meant to bring everybody a few levels up. So I think we don't have to be harsh on ourselves. You have to be realistic. To convince yourself that whatever you're doing is great and holy and read this is fooling yourself. This is meant to show us another reality. Look, we just read this chapter. Every chapter is actually this. There's not one chapter in Ayin Beis or Chassidus that doesn't try to lift you from a more material place to a more spiritual place. It just does it in different ways. When we talk about Eris and Kalim, remember we talk about Asir Ruchnis, Yitzir Ruchnis, Atzilus, Asir Sagnuzis. What's all this? It's all meant to be levels of spirit versus materialism. It's climbing the ladder. I don't think, if anyone learned this, none of us should be impacted the same way, because all of us are in a different place. The concepts are similar, but the journey is different. There's no two journeys that are alike. So if you want to take it to the next level, you'd want to say, okay, I learned Ayin Beis now for, half a year. How long are we learning this now? A year. And me and Cheskel are the most trouble, because we've been learning it the longest here.
We haven't changed the drama.
Speak for yourself.
I was in the
I was talking about you.
I think everybody changes.
No, that's for sure. But we're talking. See, but you don't want to get away with that statement. That's an easy statement to make. That just sitting here changes. The question is that should we be doing more than just the natural osmosis change?
No doubt about it.
Okay, so that's why I'm talking about it. So the question then has to be, okay, how? That's why I always say, and I say it to myself as well, unless you apply this to psychological models that work for you, it becomes abstract ideas. That's the bottom line. That's why I say to you, let's not jump to Atzmus. Not because of course, academically, intellectually, abstractly can go to Atzmus. But we're not Atzmus where we are. The Avodah of it, we're for sure not by Atzmus yet. That's my point. That's why you can't see God's face and live. Not because success, not for philosophical reasons. Yeah. Not philosophical reasons, because the real reason there's a Seder Shtalshus, because we really are not there. And you have to climb it. So yes, my mind is, I relate very much to Lifnei Tzimtzum. I'd love to just speak about that. But I know my life is not there. So that's just fooling yourself. That's the big problem, when you convince yourself that because I understand that level, that's why I am there, but I'm not there. And I know if you're not there, you really don't get it. That's the bottom line. So the question here is, and I think this is why, even let's say we're climbing the ladder of the spheres here, from sphere as number. We're number people. We're in the real coarse numbers. Forget about the story. And what he's talking now, transparency, that you're literally, the Keli is like a Evan Saper. We're on a number level. We're on a very low number level, as a matter of fact. So our minds can travel to these places. That's what the beauty of Chabad Chassidus is. The Alter Rebbe and Chassidus take us to a journey far beyond where we are. Because when you cognitively can go there, then you emotionally can maybe catch up. But I think our minds are far, far ahead in understanding, those that understand this, than where we are. So now comes the next question: is okay? It's like the first car is a million miles ahead. The last car is your body, and your never Shabbat is like still in the basement. So now you have to go back at times and say, okay, where are you? So of course I agree that a person, if you think about this and you just spend time in this, it has to refine you in some way. But there's a next step. Maybe what I just said is actually mamat l'mayla lamata. Mamayla lamata is when you learn this and it elevates you to another place. But it's being lifted by the Rebbe Rashab's explanation. Mamat l'mayla, we're real davening. That's why I said davening. You got to daven. Is really where you sit down, you start working out where am I in context of all of this. I'm learning here about the highest levels of spheres and so on. Where am I? Where's my pure gashmis and materialism? To me, that's the bottom line of this. If a person doesn't ask that question, the whole thing is pointless. That's why I'm saying. So we understand there's both sides to it. Now we're learning it relatively quickly based on avoided point. Avoided we should still probably be in chapter 1, trying to figure out if we're there. We have meanwhile learned 115 chapters, and I don't know, I can't master for sure not, but at least there's some flow going on. We get a certain picture. And then the question has to be, I think that's why the Rebbe Rashab, I guess, sensing that we're getting too complacent, too comfortable with Haskalah. So he's reminding us in this chapter that there's a Nefesh Habamis to reckon with. He does that once in a while. So right, so that's a good refreshing, and this is what you have to farbring. I mean, listen, learning Chassidus and farbringing go hand in hand. You can't just learn it. I mean, what we're talking now, this is how I would translate this. And then you deal with questions like he asked. What do you do? How do we get beyond the fact that we are just simple creatures? We want our needs met. We're trying to just make ends meet. We pay our bills. Bring up our families. We marry off our children, and then and have a little manucha. Hanefesh. It's clear. The Rebbe Rashab was not oblivious of the people's needs. The Alter Rebbe Tanya. The whole Tanya was eitzes. It's a device. It means he was based on his conversations with people. He wasn't writing a book in heaven, and yet the book is completely about becoming a much far refined human being. And you don't hear a lot of talk. Like when you read this, you could say, is the Rebbe even aware that we're just struggling we're simple people that are just struggling with making ends meet? But I have to say that the Rabbeim and Chassidus did not expect just us to be let's call it this way, Shulchan Aruch Jews, meaning moral, ethical creatures. Take care of your wife and children, and give some tzedakah. They wanted us to be divine. That's the ultimate. You have to say Chabad. This probably is the reason that some people, even Gedolim, maybe had disagreements with the Alter Rebbe. They said we have to let's just make it. That's why Tzaddik b'Menaseh Yichya. The Tzaddik will be up there. We'll have faith in the Tzaddik, and the Tzaddik will take us to the divine. We'll come to you some Chester, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, etc. But we're simple people. What are you schlepping us into heaven? Basically. The Chassidus Chabad was clearly not.
Even a little shrine.
No. Yeah. Another thing, another very important point. This is about Mashiach. The same idea with Mashiach. Many Jews will say, fine Jews, Mashiach is in the world of the divine. We're simple Jews, leave us alone. We're basically trying to make ends meet, etc., etc. Why are you taking us to that level? But Chassidus and the Baal Shem Tov and Mashiach telling the Baal Shem Tov did not wanted more from us. Now, I understand where a person could say, okay, I'm just not there. I'm a simple guy. What are you schlepping me into divine levels? But clearly the purpose of existence is higher than that. And that's why Chassidus requires that the neshama has to be such a powerful force. Because if it's just basically surviving in a fine, refined way, if we're just surviving, then this whole purpose of existence would be, we'd be basically very small, inferior creatures that are just lifting it up to a little level, and we don't expect more. This is definitely high expectations of us. The highest possible expectations, actually. Now, I prefer to be part of this club than the other one, the survival club,
Yeah, but today the dominant Jewish thinking is a survival.
What are you talking about? 150
But it was always this way.
They didn't
So
have
when you say that Yutas Kislev and the Arizal and the Alter Rebbe came to bring Chassidus to the world, what are you saying? That the four Primis HaTeira was just for Yechidei Gula. Let's spell that out. People don't even realize what that means. It means only individuals in a generation were going to these levels. And the rest were expected to be Shulchan Aruch Jews. Do what you have to do. Follow Shulchan Aruch. Be a kind person. Bring up your family. Shemer Torah mitzvahs. Ethical. As good as you can be. But it was not expected to go into the higher realms. That's why it is a big chiddush. That's why Yutas Kislev was not a small matter. There was exer because it was not for the masses. It says that regular people should be involved in these levels. And many people say, let's be honest and realistic. You figured out your stupid little Taivas and Yetzer Hara. You're climbing into these high levels. You have an answer for this question? I'll give you my answer. Well, the philosophical answer really is the deep philosophical answer, which is essentially the basis of the Rebbe's Siyum and the Rambam and Tafshel Lamed Hey, is that you can't transform. If you do not transform this world, you're ultimately being transformed by it. So, in other words, to be the Shulchan Aruch Jew, so to speak, and just do the survival Jewish mode, ultimately it's succumbing to Golus and succumbing to darkness. Because, like you said, you cannot change the system from within the system. So, if you don't go into the divine engine room and re-engineer this, yes, you could be born and die and bring up your children and everything should be nice, but you can't change the world. So it's such a perpetual Golus, essentially. Let's say every Jew was a Shemer Torah mitzvahs. We can go on forever like this, and we do our thing. We're little servants playing out our role. Okay, so that's
anybody from another city.
hold on. That's one. That obviously means that the world will never fulfill its ultimate purpose. So someone will say, maybe that's not the ultimate purpose. Maybe the ultimate purpose is that we should just be fine Jews, and next generation takes over and so on. Well, there's enough proofs that let's put it this way: even logical, is that what God wants? Is that what God created the world for to be? That we should just continue? Chassidus obviously wants that there should be an ultimate destination where godliness will be in this world in the highest possible way, and not just following the laws, so to speak. Now, of course, you could argue about this, but philosophically, but I'll tell you the biggest problem. What does it mean that you can't change the system from within the system? There's no way that you can continue to perpetuate that, because the world's powers are more powerful than these laws itself. In other words, the only thing that's a power, remember we learned this about sexuality when we learned Yutas Kislev. The problem would be, that would be nice if the world was not exerting any energy. So then, okay, it's a neutral world, it's dark, and our goal is to be Shemer Torah mitzvahs. If you leave that be, we will be ultimately, and we'll die from that, because the world's powers, whether it's taivas, machshava zaras, sexuality, money, kavod, will destroy. They're destroyers. They're not neutral. So therefore, the only way to deal with that is you have to climb to a higher place and bring energy from a higher place and to transform, or else you're going to succumb to the powers of this world. So if we were in the world of Atzilus, so Tanya says the purpose of existence can't be Atzilus because it's a Yeridim Eirpan of his Baruch. Because what's the point of Atzilus? Atzilus doesn't pose a challenge.
Can't they say like the Sapa? They say
Hold on a second. One second. Let me just finish a second. But in Atzilus, you could say at least there's also you're not going to succumb. Assimilation is not going to take over. Taivas are not taking over because they don't exist there. In this world, however, the bottom line is to just go into a maintenance mode and just continue going. Impossible, because the forces of dark are too powerful. So what do you do then? The only answer is you got to go to a higher place outside of the system to transform the world, that you actually transform the system. That's the only way to do it. Well, first of all,
It's also a mountain.
yeah, it's a higher place.
We survive.
And learning Torah, definitely from
Learning
outside.
Torah, they say we're doing the mitzvahs.
I think you're
Learning Torah,
picturing it too
that keeps us
square,
going.
too...
That keeps us going.
It's not a furniture store like this.
well, but you're asking a question of the whole Chassidus Chabad, right? That's what you're asking. The answer is that I go back to what I'm saying. I don't agree with you. Once the Alter Rebbe said that the child is sick, and if you don't give him the Keser Melech, well, you're saying basically, why do you have to go crush the king's crown? Give him Torah and Shulchan Aruch. Why didn't it work?
No, I said this is the minimum. But
No, I'm just asking a question. Well, why? Because the child is sick. It won't help you to just do. I'm responding to you. You just said to me, doing Torah Shulchan Aruch is also a big thing, but the child is sick and it's not helping, and it's 50% into marriage.
No, I just said this is for sure not enough.
But once I'm saying, you asked me a question, I answer you.
Like that. You say like as if this.
Yeah, because it can't survive.
Because I think the Shulchan Aruch is also an effort. It's also climbing. It's also.
If we lived in a ghetto and there were and we lived in a ghetto insulated, you could argue 500 years ago, if we stayed in the ghetto, we maybe still be in that place today if we were never released and there was no technology and so on. That's what you're arguing, basically. But that's not the reality. Life is not that anymore. That's what you're saying. I understand. Look. The Gili HaChassidus did not come 500 years ago. It came when the world was opening up and it was going to bring death. When we say that Yisrael, the Salfus, that the Jews were in a faint 300 years ago, but where were they? What would you call it today if that was a feint? If that was faint. In other words, bottom line is, if you want to put it bluntly, without Chassidus, we believe that Judaism would die completely. Unless there was a miracle from above. But that's not what God wants. He doesn't want miracles. He doesn't want us to rely on miracles. He wants us to do what we have to do. So I'm not dismissing it, but it doesn't have the power. Look, the two reasons Chassidus was revealed says, one is because the darkness is deeper, so you need a greater light, which is what I'm explaining now. Another is a taste of Mashiach, which is Haba Hataya. Fine, so it's interdependent. But the first point, what does it basically mean? It means without the Gili of the Pnimius, the regular Torah mitzvahs nigla cannot survive. That's what it means. Simple words.
100,000 people there seeing. Yeah, all the.
No, but we're talking about.
I don't want to get much.
No, but tell me, ask you, what you have an answer? Or you want to hear my answer?
Since they wouldn't be here.
That's number one, and number two, it's a collision course. It's just a matter of time. There's no way. You know the deterioration going on beneath now. Look what's coming out with this whole sexual stuff. Us and them is the same. By me, it's chassidus. Don't look at us. There's no such thing as us and them.
No, but you brought up some of your points. I said that.
But this is the only place. This is the only thing that's going to save it. That's what I'm saying. Here too, the same thing. People don't know chassidus is going to go to the same place. There's nothing to do. There's no us and them. It's not about communities. You don't look chassidus. You're not a chassid. It's a simple. I don't care what picture you have on the wall. What does it mean? How makes a chassid? They put on Veinu Tam?
You saying that in a collision course?
They're learning Torah.
No way that it could.
They're learning within the system. They're learning the Torah that came down to the system.
No. Let me explain to you called collision. Let me tell you something. Did you ever hear of a poem called Howl?
I saw the best minds of our generation.
Right, exactly. I saw the best minds of our generation blown. The cream of the crop of Jewish minds were lost to us in the last few hundred years. Not just Haskalah, the best Jewish minds are lost. Have been lost. Many of them. That's one. There's no Haskalah movement today. We're talking now. Talk about now. Yeah, we're the best Jewish minds. There's guys called Mark Zuckerberg, Google, and so on. That's where the great Jewish minds are today. Einstein.
Not an issue.
There are some. We have plenty of Gehenim. But a good Jewish, the best minds, which is the leaders, that's for sure a collision course. There's no way with Chassidus that they're going to. The approach in the Jewish world outside of the world of Chassidim is give them kavod. Give someone with leadership qualities kavod, and that will keep him because he's now getting kavod. He's now a leader. That is their real. That's their so-called. That's the oxygen for a person with talent. Now, that alone is. I know it's funny, but to me, that's definitely not godly. Chassidus' oxygen is godliness, not kavod. It's bittul. It's understanding these higher things. So the great minds are inspired by this. That will keep them in the system, in the so-called. I don't say. Listen.
Looking for a dark, angry fix.
I speak to all kinds. I speak to Satmar guys and others, and I ask them, the more enlightened ones. I say, how long do you think? Some say it won't last. The whole thing is going to fall. Others say, like a cult. A cult can last for many years. You keep on brainwashing. So it's true. Let's say even you have a 50% fallout rate. But you still have 50%. That's a big number when there's a lot of children. Let's say a family of 10, 5, let's say stay from 5 don't. So you can keep going it's called sheer inertia. The sheer momentum of just like that. But I find an interesting thing that's happened. I look at the Christians and the Muslims. I see a trend toward refinement. Instead, so I have to say that it's going to go one way or the other. In other words, I can't see Islam being. I see Islam going where Christianity went. At some point, they're going to have to become tamed, and will not have the radical elements that they have today, which means a much more balanced approach. And I have to say, you want to say lahavdil, that has to happen here too, or else it will self-destruct. That's how I see it. Now, even if it doesn't, to say blind cult following of Judaism is the thing that Judaism survives on, come on, how many people can respect that even say it in a respectful way? Let's say you're even right. Let's say you just follow the laws. Let's say you have enough conformists that will follow till the end of time. Is this, they have plenty of understandings, but let's say, however they handle that. I don't even know how they handle that.
No, I totally agree with you.
No, my question is, even if you say it has, scientifically you can show it has power for 1,000 years, is that satisfactory?
No. Every tshuva of the Torah has to have a drop of tshuva law. Every yichudit of the Torah has to have etwas von der Yichud. Anders kann das sein mit der Nemes. Das verstehe ich. Aber doch gefragt. Sein Borech Olein ist schon als Eis. Es kommt mir nicht so aus. Wenn bet dem Hebers, das soll gehen mal Chova. Sie das ist eine Versicherung falsch. Das ist Porsche auf gehen klappen sich auf wann. That's what he's saying.
I understand, but to me,
well, that the whole thing, the whole Movis is du sagst in a way like.
I understand. So what? So you explain to me. So why are you learning this? So what is this?
I'm sure that you should have.
So
understanding that.
Well, explain to me. So and what's your question then?
But you cannot get me or him, I don't know, whatever, the simple lower people to get to a point where we'll just, the Borech Olein of Zayin Wagen.
So what are you learning this for? I'm asking you a question.
Hopefully I'll get somewhere, and as you said,
that's a satisfying answer to you.
Listen, I don't know.
Okay, let's put it this way. Look.
I wanted you to see the Zion.
If you see, yeah.
Kind of like also.
I what you just said to me is mumbo jumbo. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know.
There's 10-15%. But I don't understand.
Being bitanemes, of being bitanemes. You see yourself becoming a
so why someone said, if you're satisfied with what you just said, you shouldn't be sitting in here and learning.
I wish I would be.
But why are you spending time learning this and not going back to your life?
Because I really do understand that this is very important. I do understand that this is the goal of my life.
But you don't see it realistic?
But I don't see realistic that I will 100% in a course of half a year become a flying saucer,
So what do you see?
I shall become definitely a better chassid, a better Jew, hopefully,
Okay, so then.
I'm going to say some feeling for that too.
No, but bottom line is, will you daven differently when you say the kol minis v'asa?
Definitely, I think we daven differently every day.
So then, what's your question? So then you have your answer. You found yourself your answer.
Aber ich sag, doch gefragt, ab wie viel soll ich fühlen, als ich bin ein Falscher? Mit dem, was ich bei dem Ebersten, also ich gebe mal Chove,
you want to know how much I think? 100% that you're a falsher. Because of me, yeah, that's how I feel. You're asking me, I feel that way. I'm talking about how to look at yourself. But he's asking me how to look at himself, not how I look at him. That's not what we're talking here. He asked me how to look at himself. I can't see how you can see it otherwise. Because as long as you give any emes to your falschkeit, you're going against what he says here. He's calling it movis and ra, and you want to say it's realistic. So is it movis or chaim? He calls it movis, the Rebbe Rashab. So I don't see how you can justify it personally. You can't go two ways. It's either death or life. So you could say, like you said, you want to climb. Meanwhile, right now you could say is, I think what he calls death, I still call life. And that's what I value. That's what you have to say to yourself. And I'm trying to figure out how I could start seeing that it's more like death. That's okay. Fine, so say it that way. But how could I give you credibility? How could someone reading this say to themselves, honestly, that you know what he's saying is not, because I'm not there, means that I'm still alive. No, you're not. You are living a false life. Real Chassidish that they looked at themselves, saw themselves completely false.
100%.
So that's what you're asking. So I'm answering you.
No, but you're
talking about this, I don't know.
Heaven,
I'm not talking about, the Rebbe Rashab just called it death. Is that called heaven by you?
By me, the fact that I do understand that I am living in a blotte, Das ist shame level. Mit dem, was ich verstehe.
We're going in circles. I don't know, we're going in circles here. I understand. Chassidim, you look at yourself, you're talking about Ayin Mitzchus and someone else. I made that distinction half hour ago.
I was trying to explain him. But
So you're talking to yourself, a Chassid Shiyid reading this would see himself not demoralized. Demoralization comes from the Yetzer Hara. Let's make something very clear here. Let me go even a step further. Are you a healthy human being or you're not a healthy human being? When a person is asking for material desires and learning Chassidus, they have to understand, you asking it for healthy reasons or unhealthy reasons?
That's the answer.
I think it's unhealthy reasons, primarily. Because we're very selfish, and this is for us a way of getting security, and this is where we go. Chassidus is going to challenge you to the core about this issue, what is valuable, what is not. And if you're not ready to be challenged, I would suggest you don't read it. Because I'm not going to compromise what it says here when speaking to myself. I'll be malamet chus on everybody, but you taking this and want to weaken this because you're not there. So what do you want? So don't learn it. You don't feel comfortable with it. Don't learn it.
no, I feel completely good with that fact that I know who you stay. But on the other hand, I look at you and I think that you feel comfortable. You're not living in a hut where the rain is dropping on you. You know what I'm saying? And do you feel verfüllt mit that?
For what?
Du bist da zu Fulter?
I don't. Do you know the difference between atzvus and muridas?
Yeah.
Atzvus is called being demoralized. Someone reads Chassidus and is demoralized. That's not the kavanah, because demoralization comes also from the Yetzer Hara. It's not about being broken. You're talking about creating a healthy form of angst, a healthy form of frustration that motivates you to climb. And you learn this? Absolutely. That's what you're distinguishing. So many people who themselves are insecure human beings, because most people are insecure, so when they learn these things, it just feeds more. So, okay, I was a shmata, now I think I'm a bigger shmata. That's not the kavanah of this. The words you're using are wrong. For me, when I read this, I'm empowered by a chapter like this. I'm not weakened at all, even though I'm not on this level. Why? Because he's 100% right. He's defining Gashmish for what it is. It's half dead, basically, and the taivas are completely dead. But we've given death life by thinking it's valuable. It's like we worship the package. To me, this is very empowering. It lifts me up, and I feel empowered. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel, I'm a shmata. That's not the point. He wants to lift you up here. He's not trying to knock you down. He's trying to give you reality. Now, for someone else, as I said, I'd be malamet chus when they daven. For myself, I spade is a spade. I know what he's saying here exactly. So when you're asking me, I'm melamed chus, I could be melamed chus in everybody. You want to talk about how you should look at it? You should figure out that your whole life is probably quite superficial, and you're focusing on very materialistic externals. Nein. Yeah, but you should be melamed chus on me now. I'll be harsh on myself.
I'm trying to learn for myself, like you said.
The problem is, ich daven nicht. What do I mean by daven? Lip service I do like everybody does. Davening like this requires a determination. This is work.
So who is the Rebbe?
You're talking about me or you?
You. I want to take a dugma chaya.
I don't think I should be a dugma chaya. I didn't put up myself as a dugma chaya.
You say that my understanding is like putting me down, and you say you're getting empowered by understanding how false you are.
You know why? Because I'm secure, so this can't put me down.
What is the security coming from?
I'm just. I think I feel secure. I don't feel beaten.
You understand better?
No, because I don't feel I was beaten up in life. I feel I was blessed. I don't feel beaten up. I feel proud of myself. I have self-pride.
But what about the change? The real change?
I'm a divine soul. No, God chose me to be here. He gave me another day today. What better vote of confidence is that? So I feel
and you love poetry.
No. And I feel responsible. To be very honest, I feel responsible to do something about this, and I hope to do something today and tomorrow and so on. That's my goal. I work in these things. So for me, one of the ways I do my davening and how I implement this is by teaching it to others and trying to turn it into a practical blueprint for life. Because when I do that for others, I myself become more refined. That's my approach. So I don't just learn this; I teach it, and I try to. No, I cannot say that I have. That's a big challenge. Whether I can go back now after we finish this class and sit down and daven and just absorb it all and work on myself, that is very hard for me.
But das ist die ganze Frieden.
Not Dafka. So the Rebbe gave us another approach. He said, in our generation, maybe there were chassidim that did that, and those that can do it today should do it. But today there's another approach called ashlichus. There's a big world out there. Take it, teach it to others, inspire them, show them how it can change their life, and it will change your life in return. Because then the Rebbe would have not sent shluchim out. He would have said, stay in 770, learn Ayin Beis, and daven afterwards for 7 hours a day. That's the shluchus. He didn't say that. He changed that. Now, I'm not from the believers that say that there's no Aveda today. For those that are capable, but Aveda today is when you really work with others. Meir ein shneim Hashem. So for me, that I can tell you, I can testify to that. That if that's how I really get more refined when I help refine others.
Really change the answer. You cannot stay at least.
No, but that's why you're not my Rebbe. I have a Rebbe who said otherwise. He said the way to change yourself is to go out and change others. He said, well, I just asked you a question. Why didn't the Rebbe, who knew all this, say that everybody should learn chassidus and daven 7 hours a day and get and scrap together some money to make a parnasa for the rest of the few hours?
But that's what I'm asking.
I'm asking. Why didn't the Rebbe say that?
So teaching us, you feel that davening is...
No. I asked a different question. Why didn't the Rebbe say what I just said? Because that's clearly not the Aveda. Because my opinion is 2 reasons. Number 1 is because we're not in that madrega, and to expect that the Rebbe realized it's not going to be the Aveda of most people. Number 2, there's a big fire burning out there. Number 3, the Rebbe understood is the end of Birudim. Not every generation. Remember we learned in Adam is Reish, then comes Beis Hamikdash. The Aveda of the earlier generations was the Aveda Pnimius of Ava V'Yira. Today the Aveda is far more finishing, and we're standing on their shoulders. So if you look at the whole picture, our job is learn chassidus, bring it to people and help them transform their lives. It'll transform you in return. So you'd be right if you were in the Alter Rebbe's times. We're not in the Alter Rebbe's times. There's a different shlichus today, and the same kavon. So I think the internalization of this, in my opinion, for me for sure, everybody's got to make their own choices, is through working with others, and that's why I do this. That's how I see it. Now, is that a cop out? Maybe, yeah. Probably. I think about it. It would be probably much healthier and more powerful what I do if I sat down and davened 5 hours with this and really worked on myself. But maybe that's my nisayon. So I'm not defending it. But I tell you, but I definitely can tell you what I don't do is I don't go to anything else. I work all day in this. This is my work. My whole life is dedicated to this. So I could say to you, it could be better for sure. That's always. I just gave you an example how it could be better. So I maybe found a little comfort zone too, but it's not complete comfort zone either. Let's put it that way. How each of you determine that you have to decide. How taka are you doing something like this? What are you taka doing with this? But for me, I absolutely tell you right now, I take this chapter, and if I could write something up, and if I could distribute it widely to a lot of people, and they personally help their lives, help their relationships, their marriages, their families, to be better Jews, to better, healthier human beings, I have no doubt that's my Aveda. I have the skill to do that. And I must do that. And when I learn this, I absolutely elevates me. When I can translate it that way to people, it definitely becomes much more personal to me. Far more personal to me. Now, I know this is not the kind that this may go back to the debate, the big debate that we have of Aveda from the past generations and Aveda today. I personally think this is what the Rebbe wanted Shulchan to do. They should be learning Chassidus B'Zdaf Tzayin and capturing the minds and hearts of their communities with it. But most people don't know. See, but the strength I have, which I know is my skill, is I know how to learn Chassidus in this way, and I know how to teach it this way. Most people, even who went to yeshiva, don't know how to learn and teach Chassidus in a relevant way, like what I just said. So then definitely for them, maybe the only way is davening, because what else can they do with this? But to me, I have another approach, so to speak. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think that davening is probably a critical component. Not probably, for sure, a critical component. That itself has to become you have to teach people to daven. I have to teach myself how to daven. We don't know how to daven. Based on what he says here, davening is hard as it is to do this. To go sit down and work through all your taivas and understand that the divine is the force and go from the bottom up. Learning, but he said, Lamayla Lamata is far easier than Mamat Lamayla. What we're just learning now.
Second. So, can I just ask you one question? After all this said and done,
What?
After all said and done, which I totally agree with you, my question is, what do you, as you avoid, make a void, what do you fill it with? In other words, by coming along and saying like this, that this is Mavis and this is Ra, and you got to separate yourself from that, What do
You need a mashpia. Do you have a mashpia?
One second.
You need a mashpia to take this and apply it to your personal life. I don't know your personal life.
I'm speaking about
Hypothetical. And I just spoke for an hour that it's not general, it's specific and personal.
No, you're not listening what I'm
You
saying.
didn't hear what I just said?
Finish. Let me give me another a minute. Okay, I gave you an hour. Give me 2 minutes. Listen. The point I want to say is like this. Let's say I relearned this and I understand what it says. My question is, what do I fill it with? In other words,
you need a mashpia, I told you, to go with this pedic and apply it to your life. I repeat, I heard what you said and I respond.
I'm speaking about the thought.
I don't know.
Something that you...
No.
Listen to me a minute.
So I said to you, there's no thought. I have no thought. Every person is different. I spoke...
But I'm asking again. I'm asking, is there a filler? Is there bechlal? Like, what do you put it... Forget until I get to the mashpia, how to apply it to me. Is there something that you could fill it with? For example, you don't cook in all these... You go out of your comfort zone.
Everybody has to find the thing to fill it
The
with.
question is, what do you feel? Is there such a thing as...
Yes, I just gave you exactly what I fill it with. My life is dedicated to teaching this, to explaining it in a model that works for people's lives. So that's me. So you have to ask yourself, how would it fill you?
That's not what I meant. Also, I meant to say the ruch needs to get part. Just like you said over here when you spoke about that you have.
Why do you want to avoid being personal about it, if I may ask?
Okay, because why?
Yeah.
Because when I say personal, you send me off so much fear.
I send you because that's the only way to do it.
I'm speaking about the fact.
We know that you're talking personal. You're just turning in general because I'm saying mashpia.
Yeah, okay. So give me the minute. Give me 5 minutes.
I'm not as mashpia.
Give me the 5 minutes and listen to what I'm asking.
No,
it's a personal question. It's a personal question in a general way. My question is there such a thing that you could feel like I said like this? They used to say as out of the years is the guest time. To get to this time, you have to break a whole bunch of other times. What I'm asking is, how do you turn around your you're sitting and learning and davening, and you're successful in pushing away the movis. What do you feel? Okay, like you said.
So every person has to find their personal mashpia.
There's got to be something, a substance. You say, look, this is what you're going to replace it with. How are you going to replace it with? Find a mashpia and see how you could adapt it to yourself. But I'm asking, is there a substance that you could replace this with? Don't forget like this. You're pushing away the movis.
You see, keep repeating yourself.
Is there a chayim?
If I give you the answer and you don't follow what I'm going to give you, you're going to be responsible. You'd rather me to say an answer and you're not going to do it, or you want to rather not say it?
Yeah, rather you say that.
Okay. For 45 years that I've answered this question in every Fabrengen, that the shlichus of our generation is not to go into business and make money. The shlichus of our generation is to dedicate our lives to Yifutzah Ma'anesecha Chutza. That's the answer, my friend. That's how you fill the void.
Okay.
To dedicate your entire life, the shlichus of neshama by the neshamas came down to the generation is your futzum and
Yeah. You did answer that question. But I think you understand right. Why you gotta do it?
Look, let's put it this way: the avoida of actually refining ourselves with these ideas. So he says here, tefillah is the way we do it from the bottom up. Torah is the way we do it from the top down. So Torah is when you're learning it. Tefillah is when you work on it. those that there's no question that would be unbelievable to be able to create a movement of mispalalim daveners that know how to daven with this, and turn it into a real force. But I do also know that in our generation, the Rebbe also gave us a Yetzel Muhammad's Beis David. There's a war, and I think it's a gift to be able to spread Chassidus, use our skills and tools to do that, everyone in their own way. And that too, I believe, is a part of the Aveda. That's not part of the Haskalah. It's not just learning it, because then you're acting on it. And you're living it, and you have to live it. Like the Rebbe, how often the Rebbe say, you have to be, once you're teaching, you have to be somewhat of more of a model, even if you don't like it. Yeah, and it forces you to have to address it in that way. Is it as good as sitting and davening? Look, we discussed this. I mean, there's different ways to look at it. I absolutely believe that you want to apply these type of things, you can turn it into a very strong model. Here he's focusing definitely on the facts of describing Gashmias and Taivas and so on. So now let's...
No, but he mentioned it before, but I don't know if I heard an answer. Like, I understand the answer. Just one more thing. He says if Gashmias is Mavis, so then how far do you take that? And as a natural outgrowth, you could go say, you have to live in a hut. A nice house is Gashmias and it's Mavis. I shouldn't be living in a nice house. I mean, how far do you go with that? That
was not what the Rabbeim and Chassidus did not require us to be ascetics.
Oh, no.
So they didn't ask us to live in the streets.
Part of his question.
First of all, it says
by asking Hashem,
So I answered this. How many times I've answered this again and again.
Didn't have soles on his shoes.
Achsid Shid, Daf Kuchen auf sich, as it steht for Nebuchadnezzar, he's asking for Movis, was to wonder whether he's doing the right thing. Yeah, look at yourself again. I'm not talking about others. His kids?
Ascetics, you said.
Ascetics. Ascetics is a different thing completely. The Rebbe didn't say, the Rabbeim didn't say we should live in the streets.
But that's not the question. The question is saying we were way beyond that. Because if you were going to hold it like this, we would...
Does anybody at this table suffer from Taivas Momen?
Yeah.
Suffer?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think it's time.
Okay.
I think you just need
What's the difference? I definitely, even if I had the money.
Okay. Some people...
This Tavis moment.
Er sagt ja, du sagst nein.
Weil ich weiß, ich kann nicht Tavis moment.
Do you know anybody that has Taivas Momen?
Do I know somebody?
Yeah.
I know people like that, yeah.
I know many people have Taivas Momen.
Boschen kipsute, nicht wird schon mal. Aber will haben noch und noch.
So look, there people have different. Some people don't have Taivas Momen. The point of the being that this chapter can be applied any way you like. Again, I think you have to distinguish between demoralization and unhealthy people who think that they're already movis as it is, and when they read this, it makes them feel even worse. That's not what the Rabbi Rashab is talking to. He's not talking to insecure people. He's talking about the secure people, secure chassidim, who lived very sparsely. They're mistapik b'muad. They don't need much. And they may be made naturally that way, or because they know they're spiritual people. That's what this is what is very much what we're talking about here. And even when they are doing gashmis, they realize that's not where it's at. Now, are we all perfect in this? Obviously not. The question is not whether it's perfect. The question is, what do you really recognize? He's calling a spade a spade. What do you want him to do? Compromise it because people are not on that level? Gashmis is movis. It's not reality. Now, the point is understanding that this thing that we worship, called packaging, is a distortion. That's what it comes down to. What's the problem with that? How you apply that in your life, figure it out. But to learn this and then say I'm going to value it, it's not valuable. You can say I'm living blind, I'm dark, but you can't call it value. It's definitely not value.
If you're going to live for kvetch, you're not going to be able to do that Veda. Achalas Adas is very important. So you need a nice house for that, fine, but it's not the Ikar.
Look, the Tzimtzum edition has a very strong hold, so don't worry, you can learn this all day and you're still going to be controlled by Gashmis. But this is trying to give us a little wake-up call that you shouldn't be in complete darkness. This is awareness. This is called awareness of reality. The reality of what our life is like. This is what I think I see. To me, this is salvation. It's like you're living in darkness your whole life, and here comes a Rebbe, he's telling you know what you're living is total darkness. To me, this is a gift, not a... You'd rather someone come and tell you, you're not healthy, and the truth is you're very healthy. We're not, when it comes to our perception of Elam Haza. Why is that like a bad thing? Yeah, of course, we learned this Perek Zayin, of course.
Then you get the guy because you mastered it.
I mean, look. You're talking about where you are.
You got a guy because he mastered it.
Listen, before I want to finish the Perek here, let me just say this. What you're all asking seems to me is, how do you match this with where you are? Well, if you were going to music lessons, and you're just beginning to play piano, and the master says to you, let me play to you this song, how it's supposed to be played. And they play it, wow, unbelievable. You say, man, I'm never going to reach that. You want to hear that, because you want to know, number one, where the goal is, the standard, and number two, you want to know how far you are from it. So the question after you learn the Perek like this is say, okay, now where do I stand? And now you could start saying, okay, now I've got myself the perfect picture. Let me figure out how to get there. I wouldn't start justifying where I am, because then you compromise. He just gave you this beautiful picture. That, to me, the way a master teacher works. They give you the highest level of the picture. Then they tell you you're not there, but you can get there. And you climb.
I agree with you.
So this is how I understand this. Now, how each of us does it is a personal thing. You have to figure out what you learned and how do you translate it. I think that every one of us here sitting with a personal mashpia would have a different application of the words movis and gashmis. Because you have to look at your gashmis, how you worship it, and figure out. Because each of us has different nisyanis in this regard. Some of us are struggling for parnasa, some are not. Some of us are struggling with health, others are not. We have different struggles. We have different things that we worship, different idol worship, so to speak. So that every person has to look at that in their personal way. That's how I would take a chapter like this. That's already beyond the scope of this class. It's already where you need to take it and apply it to your personal situation. And it's meant to lift you up, not meant to break you, that's for sure. It's not about breaking. I saw Chassidish Eden who Gashmis meant nothing to them. They were the most secure, powerful people. They were not broken Jews. They were very powerful souls. Gashmis had no value to them. Didn't see it as anything. It was insignificant to them.
Including wife and kids.
That may be not healthy.
That's another level.
That's not healthy necessarily. When it goes that far, maybe it's not so great.
No, it does go. Where do we learn that?
And there are others that Gashmis meant nothing and their wife kids did mean. Not everyone was like that. That's already, I think, a little unhealthy too.
That was scared me. I almost gave up Tanya.
Tanya at the end, it says about the wife and children.
You shouldn't give me letters about the wife and the children. This and that.
Okay, let's continue here. Let's continue. Can we finish? Let's finish. That's Teira. So after Mamatla Maila of you come to Teira. And that's after he lifted up the stone and made it a pillar, which is that the letters, Aishis, the stones, are turned into a tefillah. Elevating comes then the drawing down of the oil on the head of the top of the stone, which is the Gilui Chachmei La Mamish Lamata. Shehu b'chinas Teira mitzvah shemalabashim lamata b'dvarim gashmim. This is referring to the Teira mitzvahs that are manifest literally below in physical things. Hamachlif para b'chamer kosher posel. Like hamachlif para b'chamer, like exchanging a cow for a donkey. Kosher, things that are kosher, things that are posel. These are all material things. So though we spoke at length that Yaakov is not yet Teira mitzvahs, Teira Matan Teira didn't come, but he's the beginning of the Yichud. So the Yitzchak Shemen was symbolic of this idea of Torah mitzvahs coming down. It's preparing the way for that Aveda. Of what? Of bringing it down, like you said before, Torah brings it down into the material world. Even though it's down in Gashmias, on the stone, they should have in them this revelation of Chachmilah Mamash. Literally the oil itself. The higher Chachmah, the bitla of Chachmilah. Shulamayla, the way it's above. Like it says by Matan Teira, just like then, it was be'ema v'yira with a awe and fear or trembling. But that's Afkan also now. So in other words, you have to bring the same passion, the same emotional power that it had then, the effect, the awe that it had then. Pirush Malahalan, what does Mahalan mean? Then means B'shas Matan Teira al Har Sinai. Shoy be'ema v'yira b'chins bitlamiti. just as it was then, meaning by Mountain Torah and Har Sinai, what was there? It was be'emer b'yira, with this deep awe and, I would say, reverence. In a total bittul, a miti true bittul, shaz haya b'chinas gili b'tachlis. Because then there was an utter revelation. Sheshamu pi atzmos. They heard from the mouth of Atzmos himself, Hamaitzel, the emanator, Anoich Hashem Elokecha, I am your God. Afkan, Malahalon, Afkan. Also now, meaning today when we learn Torah, Hainugam Kamosha Torah Melubeshes Lamata B'Dvarim Gashmim. Also now, not when you're standing at Har Sinai and you're hearing it directly, but even when you're down here below, and El Mazagash in the material world. How Torah is manifests and clothes itself in physical things. There should be through the Torah that we learn now in physical things. When you're learning in Gemara, you're learning these dinim. You should have that gili chachmi la mamash. That's vayitzuk shemen al reisha. V'zein peseches yudecha al tikri yudecha el yudecha. When we say Peseches Yudecha must be the Chochay. Peseches, open your arms. So you don't say Yudecha el Yudecha, which means like Haidah.
No, he's explaining it. Beis Yudin.
Is that a Gemara? Is Yudecha is a Gemara?
No, the Alter Rebbe says in Torah.
Okay. So the Yudecha behind Beis Yudin Yudecha, two Yuds in it. To the Havai of Adnai b'chinas Chachmei Lo v'Chachmei Tata. That's Havai Adnai Chachmei Lo and Chachmei Tata. So Chachmei Tata is usually Malchus. And Chachmei Lo is this. So you're bringing basically that two Yudin, that the higher Yud should come in the lower Yud. Mala'alon Afkan. That you're bringing a higher level down, that it should be below just as it is above. I think this maybe also answers a little what we were discussing. If you only had tefillah, the Veda of tefillah is what I said before. Sitting down, contemplating where you are, understanding that Gashmi, the package is only external and superficial, and basically death or dying. It's a dying entity, meaning it doesn't have impermanence. Then understanding Ra, which is even worse. That's as much as you can do. You asked me about Sheresh and Evrayim, that's Sheresh and Evrayim prayer. So you do as much as you can do in recognizing that. Then you draw down Hamshach of Torah. When you're learning Torah, when you learn this, it has the power then to do things to you that you couldn't do on your own. So that's the point here.
But that's the halacha also. After davening, you're supposed to learn. That's
basically that's the best message. Yeah.
This is what he means also when he says al dezom shachar.
Yeah, could be that tefillah brings the Torah. Yeah. Well, we don't say this beforehand also to prepare for the tefillah. But the bottom line is, you hear what I'm saying? So we're not alone here. You make your initiative in what you can do. Then there's also the Torah brings down something that has the power to bring from a higher place down below. That's Vayitzuk Shemen. Okay. V'apsichi de Yudin, hu sheyir gili b'chinas Yud Havai b'Yuda Adnai. And what's Peseich es Yudecha? Why did you just say Yudecha? So Peseich means to open your arms. Meaning an opening is like we talked before, opening doors. It's like the opening of the Yud, that the Yud above should be open and transmit. Peseich Yudecha is a transmission, essentially. Open your arm and give. Masbiyah. So Peseich de Yud is what? That the Yud, there should be a gili of the higher Yud of Havaya. We said before the Yud of Havaya, remember, is the Evan, is the Yud of Havaya, Chochmah. The stone, right, one stone is a Yud, that it should be a transmission from there, the Yud Adnai, the Yud of Adnai, which is Malchus, the Sheresh Hamshachal, okay, one sec. The Sheresh Hamshachal, the root of this transmission is Mebchinas Atzmus Eid Ein Sof. It's from Atzmus Eid Ein Sof with the root of it all. Because that's the highest level, yeah. Then comes the follow Masbi l'chol chayrotzen and satiate or sate chol chayrotzen, everything that's alive. Chayrotzen usually means everything alive by your will, but chayrotzen
also means chay, every living being.
Like we say in Baruch Nupei Nefashos.
His desire.
Yeah, chol chayrotzen, the desire of that chay. What every animal, every creature should get what it needs. Like we say in Baruch Nefashos also. Achis nefesh kol chay. Yeah. Dahainu hamshachas b'chinas bligvul. That means transmission in a form of bligvul. That's masbiyah. That's what he says. That's the masbiyah, I think. Why masbiyah? Masbiyah is more than just peseich yisidecha. Peseich yisidecha could be a minimal transmission. Masbiyah means sviyah. That's what I think. Svisavota. U'kamesha kosu b'Mogen David Eis Yud. Mogen David is a sefer in Kabbalah from David Zayin. Kamchi. David Kamchi? Maybe no. Kimchi. Maybe not. Mogen David is a Kabbalah sefer. Okay. V'zeu sha'achal kolav of this. Now it's summing up. And V'zeu, and this is achal kolav of this. Shalei bebeis Lavan, all the work, all the activities of Yaakov in the house of Lavan, ksiv, that afterwards, vayikach even vayirim matzeva. So till now we've been talking before the journey. Because Vayitzak Shemen is all before he went out. Now he's saying this is this is after all his work in Beis Lavan. It says he took a stone and lifted it up and made a matzeva pillar. Shezau calls b'chinas halav hamshacha shalei. This is the general hamshalah v'hamshacha shalei. Both the halah, the elevations, hamshachas, and the transmissions below. There is gili b'chinas ein sof lamata, to bring down the infinite divine light below. And all the revelations, these revelations are through the containers of Atzilus. He's now summing up the whole thing. They are containers to the divine infinite light. Through these containers will be the revelation of Er. That's the Kalim he builds. The Asis, the Kalim. Okay. Now this is the opposite of the actions of Lavan. Sha'asagal. He made a mound. His intention was to conceal and to cover up, like we learned before. That the flow shouldn't. That means that he grasped on to the garments and to the concealing garments. Remember, levushim hamalimim, kelim are revealers. So he grabbed onto the levushim, which are necessary for the filter, but he wanted to manifest them, make them powerful, like we said before. B'shem asif seken alatera. Remember, he said that the gemat yigar sadusa is the shem bechiluf. So v'rotz lahaylim b'yeser, and he wanted to increasingly conceal the flow. Ava Yaakov osa matzeva, but Yaakov made a pillar. V'nichel b'zagam Ayin hatzokas hashemen. He's saying now. And this includes also the pouring of the oil. Where does it say that? Because the Vayitzak Shemen is before the journey.
There's twice. There's the one he left with him.
But later it says again that what was Asher Mashachta Sham Matzeva?
That's our big question.
Give me this Bereshus. Yeah.
One or two mistakes.
No, it's definitely two. That's for sure. But the second one, I think. No, but I'm saying he's referring to a pasuk. 1 second, let me see something. There we go.
What did the second Matzeva do that the first didn't accomplish? That's what I want to know.
First one's a basic Shem Al-Isha, then it says.
It brought it into Biyah, the first
First
Matzeva.
one I think was just a
Then it says again, 3 pages later it says.
Where's Hashem Mashachta?
No, it brought it into Biyah. Biyah Ruchni, maybe not Biyah.
This pasuk it just says, "Mashakasu Kedim Hashem Mashachta Sham Matzeva." Is it Hashem Mashachta? Probably. I have to look it up. There's something here. This pasuk that he's bringing now. Okay, I don't know where it is. I have to look it up. Okay, fine. So he's basically connecting the two. That this establishing of a matzeva also includes the pouring of the oil. That he drew down the revelation in general in Malchus. which means that it's not according to the cosmic order, the regular structure, the Esser spheres of the 10 spheres. That the energy gets diminished from level to level. And below does not radiate a real revelation. Because the general air is a limited, diminished, a concealed energy. And compared to this energy, the levushim, the garments, could conceal. For who Yaakov? Yaakov was the teferes that reaches all the way to the root of the inner keser. He draws down from the pnimis, from the inner and core divine, infinite. Shagam hamshacha b'esser spheres atzilus. That also the transmission of the 10 spheres of atzilus. Ti hamshacha shalei k'fi seder ishtalshlus. Should be a transmission that is not according to the regular flow. Even though it still manifests in measure and parameters. In other words, gvul, bli gvul in gvul. And this hamshacha is like similar, is according to the Yichud Elyon, the higher unity that happened by Sinai, by Mount Torah, that there should be the revelation, Malchus Gamba Madregas Achtachtenis, also on the lowest levels, and through this there should be a revelation of the core, divine, literally below. So essentially that's the sum up of, so Yaakov is Kalim, like Evan Sapir, transparent channels that they should reveal even the infinite Bligvul energy, and Lavan is levushim that conceal.
Is it the first and the second?
One is before the work, where he begins giving the power to achieve all these things, and the other one is after he did the birurim of Lavan. He explained it a bit earlier, not exactly, but after he did the bringing it down into the akudim vrudim, the sheep, which was bringing it down into a cosmic order.
You wrote down the Bia, the first one. I knew that one. And this one brings it down to a sea of Gashmis, maybe? No.
One second. The first one is giving the power for all the Avodah itself, just to, like before you begin. Okay, so that's before we begin. Then after the 20 years of work, you have like a conclusion where now you're already dealing with a Lavan. He's dealing now with Lavan, the second one. And your Lavan is now dealing with the garments. And he wants to keep it concealed. And Yaakov is preempting that by putting a matzeva, that even on the level where Lavan is between Atzilus and Biyah, there's a parsa, there's a curtain, even on that level it should also not, the flow should continue. It's essentially the same transmission, but one is in the beginning of the Avodah, one is at the end of the Avodah, and dealing more in an actual sense. You found it?
Yeah, after he did Avodah, the Kudim Brudim.
Right afterwards? Yeah. Oh, yeah? Beis. What is it talking about here?
He has to leave Lavan now.
Ah, okay.
What?
So you see
What?
when he finishes the work with the sheep, there's a verse that says that I, God, basically where you anointed the pillar and you made your vow, now it's time to come to return. So that mamish connects it. You could see that it's still referring to that anointment. So he's saying when he built the matzeva by Lavan, it includes that anointed oil. So it looks like it's the same matzeva. That's what it sounds like.
One matzeva.
Yeah, but there's two different places where he builds it. There's where he establishes before he's...
Simply take that matzeva and bring it to the second place?
I don't know about that.
You don't know.
It doesn't say that, but it says that the first one then he anointed it, and then it looks like when he established it again 20 years later, it was either the same thing, but it was definitely related to it. I don't know if it's physically the same. But one is before the Avodah another. He also said that there's two elements in it. One is that Yaakov drew down all the energies before the Avodah. If you go back to chapter... there's a chapter where he talks about all this. I believe it's in chapter... one second. Where was it? One second. Yeah, here. End of chapter 108. He talked that first Yaakov brought all the energies down. And then, he also, in dealing with the the energy manifests in structure, which is through the parsa, he also made a matzeva there. That's how he preempted him. So you could say that the first matzeva was more like the general drawing down of all the highest energies, and the second one is related more to the specific flow through Atzilus to Biyah. You could say that. But they both have, obviously, the general idea of elevating the material. Yeah, Kitzur. V'Allah lazeh, and the elevation to this reach this higher level is Vayikach ma'avnei hamokim eisiz dvar Hashem mokar hayesh. They took from the stones of the place, which are the letters of the words of God, that's the root of the yesh. Because after many shtalshlus, this becomes the fragmented stones. Vayosim ereishesav, and placed it under his head. Shehilam lebchinas chachma. He elevated them to the level of chachma bitla miti, total bitl, utter bitl, making them one. Then he placed it as a pillar, a marker, v'yotzik shemen, he anointed it with oil. In Aveda, this work of placing the matzeva is the work of refining the natural soul that comes, the letters of prayer that actually are a result of the refinement of the natural soul. They transforms the bitterness, which is the desires, to sweetness. Through contemplating on the energy, life, divine energy within them, and the way that energy manifests in them. And increasingly through meditating and contemplating on, I behold, I give before you life and death, life and good. That's the spiritual and the divine. He didn't say that before. He said Chaim, he said, was the spiritual, and Movis was the material. Taiv, Tara, he said, was the klippa that's like death, where you, the Taiv had it, and it's one of Misurim. And Taiv, he's saying now, is Elikus.
Yeah. Well, isn't it doing spiritual and Elikus the same thing?
No, it's not. No, Elikus is higher.
Highest level.
Movis hu adover agashmi be'etzem. And the Movis death is the Gashmi be'etzem. The physical thing is fundamentally v'arahu yataiva. And the evil is the taiva, the desire for it. Through this he takes from the animal soul hatainuk shalei. He's actually taking the pleasure that's in the animal soul and realizing that it's really trying to and harnesses it and directs it to the divine.
That he tended for 20 years, and then the finished product was the second with two.
And through this darkness will turn to light. The darkness of this world will be a revelation of energy, through the letters of Teira. And this is the pouring of oil. This is the opening, the two yuds, yud d'shem havai, be yud d'shem adnai. The yud of havai, chach milah, and yud of malchus, chach mitata. V'ze'in vayirim matzeva halav amshach. And this is vayirim matzeva, that he raised a pillar that's halah and hamshach, and drawing down, both things that he did. Okay, we stop here. We did the end of chapter 115, we page 223 and through 225, the top of 225.
To finish the mimer.